I tried to really think about what somebody with that kind of power and that kind of entrapment would feel. And ultimately, you just would want to be free from everybody's expectations. And I mean, we still have those expectations on us now, sociologically, with family, with our jobs, all of that. We are still expected in so many ways to behave in a certain platform. And so I think her story was very much that. And thinking about how you would balance all of that, which is something we still do today.
First of all, I just want to say that I read Medea thanks to NetGalley, so I really appreciate it. And being like one of the first people, like readers that have enjoyed it, I just wanted to ask you like to maybe present it for like people that haven't read it yet. So if you could just give
Oh,
us like an introduction of it,
okay.
yeah.
Oh, that's a big thing with Medea. So a lot of people are really familiar with Jason and the Argonauts and that story of the Golden Fleece. But what a lot of people don't know is how he got that, how he was able to make this entire journey. Um, and I thought that Medea's story, it gets lost in that tale. And then when Euripides wrote the play centuries later, she was just a villain, kind of the spurned woman, and it seemed really unfair to have that kind of gap. And she's always struck me as an amazing character out of Greek myth. So this is her story. This is her journey with Jason and the Argonauts, but very much the Golden Fleece told through her perspective.
Yeah, like I've been told the story of Medea when I was like younger because of school and stuff, and we are only told of her as a like an evil person, like an evil
Right.
woman. Yeah. And so what inspired you to write her story? Like how did you come up with the idea of it? Like to like
Oh,
what characters did you like? Like what aspects did you like to um I don't know, get more in deep with them? Like tell us
yeah.
about it.
She's Jason and the Argonauts is the story of the Golden Fleece is the oldest Greek myth. It's the very first of the heroic myths. And to have a woman in a position of kind of power in that always struck me as fascinating. Um, and to have her be the catalyst that actually allows the hero to get what he needs is very different from the myths that followed, from the historic myths that came after it, where it was all about the big beefy hero, and his sword and killing all the monsters. In the very first heroic myth, you've got a woman who says, "This is how you can do this." And if it wasn't for her, the story would have ended very quickly. so that fascinated me. And I've always been interested in her. And then with the Euripides kind of tale on that, which he wrote based on the myths and how they changed through the centuries, um, she kills a lot of people. And she's the only character in Greek myth to never have any consequences for that. And I thought that was fascinating. Not only a woman, but a priestess, so somebody already involved with the gods, who actually, in the Euripides version, send out a chariot for her and take her away after all these murders she's committed. And normally in Greek myth, you've got the Furies who hunt down people who have committed any kind of familial murder, especially. And she murders her brother quite brutally in the originals. So I've always been fascinated by why her, and particularly in the original versions. Um, I thought it was incredible to have a woman of power and strength who said, no, that's not the way you're going to treat me. And then had the gods kind of validate that. over time.
Yeah, I think like
Just fascinating.
we're getting a lot of mythological retellings nowadays about women of power, and the original story was not told as that. So I think it's super interesting how we can actually study the character and actually give her power, because women were not just like objects, you know. And I think Medea's story was like really interesting for this aspect because of the divine thing that went going on around her and stuff, which leads us to our second question, because I wanted to ask, so your book is like portraying Medea as a woman torn between her own will, like her desires for freedom specifically, because I think freedom is one thing that goes along the entire story, and also the expectations that were imposed on her by the gods, because she's always between gods, and society as well, because she's a princess. I haven't said this before, but like the real title of the book is Medea, Princess and Witch. So there are different aspects of her. So how did you navigate the internal conflict that she goes through? And what message did you hope that your readers would take away from her story?
Fabulous question. I think I think we can identify with her journey because we all want aspect of freedom. We don't want to be told what to do all the time, and we can chafe against that. And I think in that time period, as you say, women were objects as far as the stories go. They were kind of side notes, and obviously that wasn't the case. So what did she want? And I tried to really think about what somebody with that kind of power and that kind of entrapment would feel. And ultimately, you just would want to be free from everybody's expectations. And I mean, we still have those expectations on us now, sociologically, with family, with our jobs, all of that. We are still expected in so many ways to behave in a certain platform. And so I think her story was very much that, and thinking about how you would balance all of that, which is something we still do today. So it was kind of easy to see her internal conflict and how that would play out, given how we still feel about it today as women with all these expectations on us.
Yeah, it was like she was super powerful, like people feared her, but at the same time, like her power was not her own. Like she had to do what the gods want her to do. So people would see her as super powerful, but in reality, she was like forced to do some stuff, as like killing her brother. I mean, she kind of wanted to do it because she saw it as a like a ticket to freedom, or like a way to escape. But also, everything that happened to her was not her own choice. It was like a destiny. So I think that was super like interesting to like dive into it, because she was powerful but also not. But
Right.
I mean, she could be powerful as a woman anyways. And I think that's the real thing, you know. So since we're talking about women in ancient periods and stuff like that, so how did you actually approach depicting gender like dynamics in ancient mythology? Because we're talking about Greek mythology in this case. So what did you put of your own into the narrative?
Yeah, I think when you're writing historical fiction, it's a really difficult balance because you don't want to put too much of your current society kind of ways onto an ancient culture. But I think there's no way around that either, because we are such a product of our surroundings. But I did a lot of research, a lot of research into gender specific behaviors, and what we think they were, because obviously we don't know that well. We have to go by archaeological finds, and so a lot of it's open to interpretation. But I tried to use a lot of that historical knowledge and actual archaeology, as opposed to just the tales, to figure out what women's places were then. and they've found various writings and things from noble women, and so you get a vague sense of what their lives were like, particularly with the idea of servants and things like that. So I used a lot of the research-based gender stuff in combination with what we still do today, what we still see today, women's place still today, 5,000 years later. So I tried to balance it as best I could with kind of as much history as I could find, combined with what we know from the tales.
So can we discuss the theme of agency in the book, and how Medea actually manages to survive with it, how she grapples with it and with the forces that are working towards her destiny, like the gods in this case? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. It was really important to me that she have agency, because, like you say, she's under the control of the gods so much of the time. But within that, she had to make a lot of choices on her own, whether to go this way or go that way, and potentially anger the gods by making a choice that they didn't agree with. So the idea of freedom being the one that was constant, and how she got to that. For instance, when she goes to see Circe, and it's, you're going to walk this path because the gods are saying so, but how you walk it is up to you. And I think that was important to me all the way through, that she walked that path the best way she could, in making the decisions that she could in between these moments where the gods are using her in their own way. So giving her the choice to stay with Jason as opposed to staying with someone else that may have been a little bit nicer to her, somebody who had her heart. So I think agency was a really big thing. And of course, you're also dealing with agency in a time when women didn't have it, so, or have much of it as far as we're aware. So to be able to give her that and put her as an outsider in that respect as well, because she was an outsider in so many ways, it was important to me to make sure, and all the way through as I was kind of traveling with her, to say, what do you want to do? What's in your heart as opposed to what is expected? And how are you gonna navigate that? So it was a question I asked all the way through the book, and tried to give her as much agency within this massive construct that she had to journey through.
Yeah. Can we talk also like a little bit about how she changes throughout the book? Because like at the beginning, she's just like a little girl, and she thinks that what the gods want her to do is the right thing. So she's forced to do it, but she's also like willing to. But she's fighting like with it the whole time. Like when she grows up, of course, it's like more of a fight, because she wants something else. Like she doesn't want to do only what the gods want her to do. I think we see that when she encounters more people, like during her journey with Jason, when Jason is not the only thing that she can see. I mean, if you get it. So, and at the end, when she's finally freed by the god's will, she finds herself kind of like a little bit lost, because she doesn't know what to do. And that's crazy, because like she's like wanting that freedom like her entire life, and then she has it, but was it
Now
really
what?
worth it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Was...
I think it's a little bit like retirement, isn't it? Like you retire and then you think, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. Like what is she supposed to do now? Like, I mean, it's
Right.
like she wasted like her whole life doing what other people wanted, and in this case gods, but like we can just talk about people. And at the end, that she's got her freedom, like what is she supposed to do now? And that was really interesting. And I think, I mean, we have I like to call it like a bitter happy ending, because it was a happy ending, but like it was kind of sad. How she could have gotten more, you know. And I think that makes her like reflect on it a little bit, because like she did what she was supposed to do, so we could call her like a good girl and stuff like that. But was it like really worth it for her? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's the kind of reflection we do in life, isn't it? You get to a certain age and you start to think, what did I do with my life? Did I make the
I,
right
I
choices?
do that reflection now. Like, I'm 23 and I think, what should I be doing with my life?
Let
Like,
me
am
tell
I
you,
doing?
wait till you get to 50.
I don't really want to, but yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you do wonder, don't you? And then you spend all this time going after a goal. And I mean, we do it today, the next promotion, the next job thing, the bigger platforms. And then you get it, and what now? What next? Was it worth it? And I think her story as a whole really resonates with who we are today. It's so much a part of who we are today still, kind of the human journey. Um, Hers had a lot more really interesting creatures in it, and a lot closer relationship to the gods. But I think it's still, we reflect and we change, and I think that was a big thing for me, was seeing how she changes. That, like you say, she starts out as kind of the bratty teenager who just wants out of her parents' house, and then she goes through this life journey and gets to the point where she has to ask what she's going to do with the final bit of that journey, which was why I wrote the double timeline. Most retellings kind of don't have that. It's a very kind of linear telling, but I wanted both, because that's all we've ever seen of her, is that little chunk of her life.
Mhm.
I wanted to see the rest of it and how she reflects on that and how she has changed.
No, yeah, that was I think it was really clever. Like, for me, the things I've known like before about Medea was like just things that I've studied and like school things, you know. So I've only seen her helping Jason and like run away with him, betraying her family, and then killing her kids.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like I've never known anything else about her. So this read for me was like super interesting for this reason, and I've found a new version of her that I really like. I mean, I've always liked her because of how strong she was. I've read an Italian thing about, it was like a book about women in power in mythology, which was super, super good. And there was like this little part about Medea and her killing her kids, which was like super splatter. But was like, I mean, it just tried to make her like make you see her in a different light, which was what I liked about it. And you did it really greatly with this book, which I appreciated.
Thank
And
you. The
yeah,
thing with her kids, that's the version I wrote was actually one of the ancient myths.
right.
Because there are so many versions of it because it's the oldest. And that was a version that I thought that works, that makes sense, and
Oh,
gives her that growth, rather
yeah.
than when she starts out killing her brother and
No, yeah, I always thought she actually killed the kids, but in your story she hasn't. I hope it's not a spoiler, but uh,
I think
I
we've
mean,
given quite a few, so
yeah, it's fine.
it's fine.
I mean, it's a retelling, so it can't be really spoilery
That's it.
because
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but I was wondering actually if the thing of her like the killing of her children not made by her was like a real thing, or if you came up with it. Oh, it was
Yeah.
real, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of the original myths. There were probably, I mean, I came across at least 7 different versions of the myth. So there was a lot to choose from. And I think that's one of the great things with myth retellings
Yeah.
is how they shift and change form. So that one worked really well for me. Plus, I when I was doing my research, I went to Greece, and I went to Corinth and to the ancient temple of Corinth, which was on this hill that was really hard to hike up to. Because there's a temple below it and a castle below it, but there are ruins from the actual time of Jason, and the origin of myth, and they're tiny little ruins now. And so to stand in that temple, in that ancient temple where she may have been, you never know, and to look out, I saw that across the water, because I kind of thought, okay, if a dragon-led sled isn't going to come down and take her away, how did she get away? And there's a body of water, and I thought she sailed. I mean, that's logical looking at it on a geographic point of view. And across the water, I went and drove across. There's a tiny ancient ruined temple on a beach. There's no placard, there's no sign. It's just a tiny little ancient ruin. And there were 3 graves, a woman and 2 children, that they've never identified in this temple.
Yeah.
So
It's like destiny.
it was just perfect.
Yeah.
So
That's great.
it went with that original myth so beautifully that it was perfect.
Wow. I mean, that was like destiny that you found that.
Yeah. Yeah, really incredible.
Yeah. So let's talk about, like, we've already talked a little bit about your research. So you said you found 7 different versions of it. So how did you actually like retell those versions, and how, like, which liberties did you take? Because I think some things were of your own, of course, as any other retellers have done. So can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So I think with retellings, you have to be careful to stay as true to the myth as you can, while taking liberties. It's a balance. So I read and read and read all the different versions, but ultimately for me, it came down to character, to who she is, and the woman that I could picture so clearly and see so clearly. So for me, it was very much about staying true to who she was, as well as the myth, and looking at those different versions and thinking the Medea in my head, which one is most likely, which fits the personality of the woman that I'm coming to know and to understand. So that was a big part of it. It came back to character and to really thinking about how she traverses the world and how she would react to things, especially with regard to agency and her desire for freedom. So looking at those versions of the myth and thinking which one of those would allow me to stay with the myth, but to also provide that desire for agency and that desire for freedom. And then pulling bits and pieces out of all of them to create a version that I think could be logical, and could really take you with her on the journey. And like I say, seeing the graves and thinking that's how she would get from here to here. The fountain in Corinth has a sign that says the fountain where Glauce rinsed off the dress from Medea. Now, it doesn't say in the myth, it doesn't say in the story, it says this is where this happened. And so you think, is there any truth to this? And if there is, how can I pull from the different stories to create something really viable that really could have happened? Because I think that's one of the beautiful things about retellings and stories in general, is that you take the trip with the character. So for me, that was how it balanced that part out.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to talk a little bit about Jason, because I think it's one of the main characters, and I assume people would want to know about the love story. But how much was it love and how much was it not? Can you talk a little bit about like the dynamic between, like, the relationship between Medea and Jason? Because I think she's run away with him with all this passion and love, but like what was real and what was not.
Yeah. That was the dealing with Jason was tricky because I didn't want him to be a two-dimensional character. I didn't want him to be flat and kind of a caricature of a lot of the other heroes who come across as, big beefy guys and not a lot of depth. you know? So for me, it was important to show him as kind of a rounded person too. He didn't want this in the beginning. He was happy being a little cow herd, on the hills. So freedom was taken from him too. And he was kind of pushed into this journey. So for me, I think it was important to show that. And when he says to her, I do love you in my own way, not with kind of that fiery passion of the gods, but with that kind of earthy passion of understanding. And I think for me, that was important to show that there is a love story, but it's not flat, and it's also not this extreme drama, which I think is a lot of what people experience, is a love that isn't your Valentine's Day greeting cards and roses kind of love. It's something different. And I think that's what they had. Kind of a respect eventually, and then not. And his bitterness in the end, which, like we were saying, if you're chasing a dream and it doesn't happen, you can become very bitter. And I think that's exactly where he was. In all the myths, his ending is really awful. And it's always the same. So I thought, we can see that kind of bitterness and how a love could fall apart and become something ugly because of people's desire for something else.
Yeah, I started it liking Jason because, it treated her differently than other men had. He had respect, as you said, for her, which I liked. But when things fell apart between them, was why are you doing this? I was mad. Why?
Yes, excellent.
I was feeling at the end, it kind of was for the better because she had a way to explore other relationships with other people, and that was best for her at the end, considering everything that went on. But still was and what happened to him at the end was kind of deserved. He was alone. I was
yeah. And that was true to the myth all the way through. That was true to the myth. So
karma is a real thing.
That's it.
Yeah, for real. And also just as we mentioned Jason, he was raised by Chiron, right? I know how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Because I'm such a huge fan of the story of Patroclus and Achilles, and just I have different version of it. I'm just obsessed. And every time someone mentions it in their book, in other retellings of other people, it's like a stab in my heart.
Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it? It's such a beautiful story. But again, he was kind of outside of that relationship. He was kind of flat. He was the hero warrior. But with his relationship with Patroclus, he's a different human, and it's just stunning.
That's true. It's heartbreaking.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. True. And so when the first time Chiron got mentioned, I was isn't it the same guy?
There.
Everything is related, and then Circe also, everything was coming up. And I was I know that. That was really nice.
I've been there. I was there with them. I know.
Yeah. I'm also reading Percy Jackson right now, so all the myths and stories are it's crazy. I think in mythology, that's the crazy thing. Everything is related to everything, literally, and it's fantastic to me.
It was actually one of the things I had to be really careful with the research of Medea, because it was the first myth. So she wouldn't have known a lot of the things that happened later. So the thing with Troy, that couldn't come in until she was older. because it wasn't happening when she was young. So even though, it's all myth, I wanted to be really careful about the timeline and make sure that things didn't happen too soon, because Helen of Troy and Achilles came when she was a much, much older woman.
I think that was brilliant. Also, like in some parts, you wrote something like she wouldn't know this until, and then there was like a time, like and it was like very clever. I think I really liked it, and yeah, I really loved how you wrote it. I really love the two perspectives, like the younger version of her and the older one, as you said before. And it was really like a new thing for me to read, and it was really nice. Um, yeah. Also, so one last question that I want to put as like a generic question, because I love to do this question to every author I talk to. So as I said before, I've read this book earlier because of NetGalley. So I know other early readers have read it and left commentaries and other reviews, of course. So did you get weird reviews or stuff that you were not expecting? Or were you satisfied with the general response of people reading it? Do you think that the interpretation that people have gotten was the right one that you were trying to convey?
Yeah, I've been really pleased, really, really pleased with the feedback. I think the strangest review was I don't like retellings, and I didn't like this one. Okay.
Why would you read it?
Right. Yeah, you already don't like them, so not really. So I didn't take that one personally, because they don't like any of them. But that kind of thing always baffles me a little bit. This was actually my 13th book. I write under 2 other pen names, so I've had a lot of weird reviews over the years. But no, I've been really, really pleased with how people have responded to this. 2 other Medea retellings have come out at the exact same time.
Yeah,
which
I know.
I waited years to tell it, and now there's 2 others at the same moment. And in listening to what other people have said about the other 2 books, I'm pleased that mine sounds quite different. It's good because I think it's quite different, and that makes me happy. With the timeline thing, particularly the dual timelines. So I've been really pleased overall. Fortunately, I don't read a lot of my reviews. My partner reads them for me and weeds out the bad ones. So I don't just stop writing altogether. But yeah, I think people seem to like it. They seem to like the kind of version of that goes beyond the original myth, and looks at her as an old woman and sees that change. So yeah, I think it's good. I'm glad she's out in the world doing it this way.
Yeah, so congratulations for publishing this book. Finally, it's out.
Thank you.
How long did it take you to write it?
It started out as my doctorate project. So I was working on it for my PhD, and then it got shelved, and I finally went back to it. So all in all, it's probably taken me about 10 years to get this done, which is a very long time. But it allowed me to do all the research I wanted to do, to travel and actually look at the places. And that's special.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm so glad that you wrote it and that I could read it. Do you have plans for something other, like mythological retellings to write in the future?
I do.
Oh.
A lot of the retellings are kind of, because they're so popular right now, there's a lot of them out there, but I'm quite interested in Sisyphus. The character who has to roll a rock, the gods make him roll a rock up a hill as punishment for the rest of his eternity.
Yeah.
So he does things that constantly upset the gods, and his punishment is to roll this rock up a boulder or up a hill for eternity, because as soon as he gets it to the top, it rolls back down and he has to start over again. And I've always loved that myth because it feels like every day, our routines. like you get up, you brush your teeth, you have your coffee, you go to work, you come home, you have dinner. And I feel like it's a very Sisyphean life sometimes. So,
Yeah.
so I'm interested in tackling that next and understanding him and that myth because I think it'd be a lot of fun because he always finds ways to not push the rock.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I will keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
Um,
Hopefully, it won't take another 10 years.
I mean, take your time. It's but like, yeah, I feel like the thing you've said about like the seven different versions of the original myth made me think that we are used to say that retellings are something that are like used nowadays, but like they have been retold for like years and years in the past, which is crazy. And that's
It really
wow.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to very much talking about how we relate to them. You know, that it's such a human experience. So many of our retellings, the desire for freedom, the desire for agency and for meaning, and to do something that means something in the world. Like we were saying earlier about, what have I done with my life? They've been
Yeah.
asking it for 5,000 years.
That's
um,
wow.
so I think they continue to really speak to us.
It's true. I mean, as I've said, I've only studied about myths in school, but like as I developed this like interest for mythological stuff, I just love like new versions of everything. It's just like because you get to know something more about a character that you've just studied like superficially, which is
Mm.
it's very good. I just want to say thank you again. It was amazing to talk about Medea with you, and I appreciated your answers and your insights of your story. So thank you so much, and maybe we get to do this again in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for reaching out, and it's been so much fun. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Thank you
Thank you so
again.
much.
Thank you so much.
Have
All
a
right.
wonderful day and
Thank you, you
enjoy.
too.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.